You know what terrifies the crowd more than anything else? It's not the guy throwing punches at the bar. It's not the loud mouth running his opinions like a broken faucet. It's not even the so-called alpha male flexing in the gym mirror. No, it's the man who sits alone and doesn't give a damn. The man who walks away from their games, their drama, their desperate need for validation. And he does it with a smile. Not because he's broken, not because he's scared, but because he's figured out something they haven't. He's figured out that most of what society sells you, the endless networking, the fake friendships, the performative social media posts, it's all theater. And he's stopped buying tickets. This is the man they call dangerous. This is the man they can't control. And throughout history, this man has made empires nervous. Let me tell you why. Here's the thing society won't tell you straight, because if they did, the whole game would collapse. You're being trained. From the moment you could walk, you've been conditioned to believe that being alone is somehow wrong. That if you're not surrounded by people, constantly chatting, constantly connected, constantly performing, something's broken inside you. Your parents asked, "Why don't you have more friends?" Your teachers grouped you up for projects, because apparently you can't learn unless you're suffering through someone else's lack of work ethic. Your co-workers judge you for eating lunch alone. Society screams at you, "Join us. Blend in. Be like everyone else." And if you don't, well, they've got labels ready: unsocial, weird, loner, creep. But here's what they're really saying. You scare us. Because the man who loves being alone doesn't need their approval. He doesn't need their validation. He doesn't play their games. And that makes him unpredictable, uncontrollable, dangerous. Arthur Schopenhauer, the German philosopher who basically looked at the world and said, "Yeah, this is all pretty much suffering." He understood something crucial about solitude. He said the more someone is able to enjoy being alone, the more intelligent they are. Now, before you roll your eyes and think this is some intellectual superiority nonsense, hear me out. Schopenhauer wasn't saying lonely people are smarter. He was saying that people who don't need constant external stimulation, who can sit with themselves without reaching for their phone every 5 seconds, those people have something rare. They have inner wealth. Think about it. Most people are terrified of silence. They blast music. They scroll endlessly. They call someone, anyone, just to fill the void. Because when the noise stops, they have to face themselves. And for most people, that's the scariest thing in the world. But the man who loves being alone, he's made peace with that void. He's not running from himself. He's not distracting himself with cheap dopamine hits and meaningless conversations. He's comfortable in his own head, and that's power. Schopenhauer also said, and this is the part that'll make some people uncomfortable. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. If he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom, for it is only when he is alone that he is really free. Read that again. If you can't be alone, you can't be free. Because every time you need someone else to feel okay, you've handed them power over you. Every time you need external validation, you've made yourself a puppet. And society loves puppets. They're predictable. They're controllable. They do what they're told, but the man who loves being alone, he cut his own strings a long time ago. Enter Nietzsche, the man who set philosophy on fire. If Schopenhauer was the philosopher who told you life is suffering, Friedrich Nietzsche was the one who looked at that suffering and said, "Good. Now what are you going to do about it?" Nietzsche didn't have time for society's games either. He saw the herd mentality, the way people just follow each other off cliffs because everyone else is doing it. The way they adopt beliefs, not because they've thought about them, but because it's easier to fit in. He called it slave morality, and he wasn't wrong. Think about how many people live their entire lives doing what they're supposed to do. They go to school because that's what you do. They get a job they hate because that's what you do. They get married, have kids, buy a house with a white picket fence because that's what you do, and they never once stop to ask, is this what I actually want? Nietzsche talked about the Übermensch, the overman or superman. This wasn't some comic book hero. This was the person who creates their own values, who doesn't wait for society to tell them what's right or wrong, who walks their own path, alone if necessary. He said, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe." And that's the key word, struggle. Because choosing to be alone, choosing to walk away from the crowd, choosing to think for yourself, it's not easy. The tribe will fight you. They'll mock you. They'll call you dangerous because you are. You're dangerous to their control. You're dangerous to their illusions. You're dangerous to their comfort. And that's exactly why you scare them. Let's get into the psychology here. The stuff they don't teach you in school because it would make you too aware of how you're being manipulated. Humans are tribal creatures. We evolved in groups. For thousands of years, being cast out from the tribe meant death, starvation, being eaten by something with bigger teeth. So we developed this deep, primal fear of being alone. But here's the dark part. Society still uses that fear to control. They can make you do almost anything to belong. You'll buy the right clothes. You'll laugh at the right jokes. You'll share the right opinions. You'll perform constantly, desperately, just to stay in the tribe. Because being alone, that's the threat. That's the punishment. But what happens when someone doesn't fear that punishment anymore? What happens when a man looks at the tribe and says, "I'm good, actually"? He becomes immune to their primary control mechanism, and that's terrifying to them. There's a concept in dark psychology called social proof, the idea that people will do things simply because others are doing them. Advertisers use it. Politicians use it. Your friends use it, whether they know it or not. Everyone's going to this party. Everyone thinks this way. You don't want to be the only one who... It's all manipulation through fear of social isolation. But the man who loves being alone, social proof doesn't work on him. You can't threaten him with loneliness because he's already chosen it, and he's happy there. You can't manipulate someone who doesn't need you. And when people can't manipulate you, they get scared, then they get angry, then they try to destroy you. History is littered with dangerous loners. Throughout history, the people who changed everything, the ones who toppled empires, sparked revolutions, created masterpieces, they were often alone, not because nobody liked them, but because they saw things others couldn't see. And when you see the truth while everyone else is living a lie, you're going to be alone. Jesus spent 40 days in the desert, alone. Buddha sat under a tree, alone. Newton formulated the laws of physics during a plague, isolated from everyone. Tesla worked in solitude, creating inventions that would power the modern world. And the list goes on. But here's what's interesting. Society hated most of these people while they were alive. They were mocked, imprisoned, executed, called heretics and madmen. Why? Because they didn't fit. They didn't play the game, they were alone now, and they were powerful because of it. Even in darker chapters of history, the lone wolves were the ones who scared authorities the most. Not the organized rebellions. Those could be infiltrated, predicted, controlled. It was the individual, the one who didn't need a group, who couldn't be bought or threatened because he had nothing to lose. He was the ghost in the machine. The variable they couldn't account. That's the dangerous man. Let me tell you something you've probably noticed but never put into words. The modern world is designed to make sure you're never alone with your thoughts. Think about it. Smartphones that ping you every 30 seconds. Social media that's literally engineered to be addictive. Netflix autoplaying the next episode before you can even think about whether you want to watch it. Open office plans where you can't have a moment of privacy. Cities so loud you can't hear yourself think. It's not an accident. A population that's constantly distracted, constantly stimulated, constantly looking outside themselves. That's a population that doesn't ask dangerous questions. Questions like, why am I doing this? Who decided this is how life should be? What do I actually want? Because if people started asking those questions, really asking them, the whole system would crumble. Jobs people hate would lose their workers. Governments built on lies would lose their power. The entire illusion would collapse. So they keep you busy, they keep you connected, they keep you afraid of silence. Because in the silence, you might realize you don't need most of what they're selling. You might realize you're enough on your own, and that realization, that's the most dangerous thing in the world to them. What happens when you choose solitude? Now here's where it gets interesting and uncomfortable for a lot of people. When you truly embrace solitude, when you stop running from yourself and actually start spending time alone, things change. First, you get clear. All that noise in your head, all those voices telling you what you should do, what you should be, what you should want, they start to fade. And what's left is your own voice. Maybe for the first time in years, you hear what you actually think, and that clarity is power. Second, you get selective. You start to realize how much of your time was wasted on people who didn't matter, conversations that went nowhere, obligations that served everyone but you. When you're comfortable alone, you stop tolerating bullshit because you're no longer afraid of being alone if you walk away from it. Your standards go up, your circle gets smaller, your peace gets deeper. Third, you get dangerous. Not violent, not cruel, but dangerous to the system, because you're not playing their game anymore. You're not chasing their approval. You're not performing for their validation anymore. You've become ungovernable. And when enough people become ungovernable, when enough people choose themselves over the system, everything changes. That's why they fear the man who loves being alone. He's the beginning of the end of their control. But let's be real for a second, because I'm not here to sell you a fantasy. There's a shadow side to solitude that nobody wants to admit. Yes, being alone can be powerful. It can be freeing. It can be the thing that saves you, but it can also destroy you if you're not careful. Because here's what most people don't understand. Solitude itself is neutral. It's not good or bad. It's a space. And what happens in that space depends entirely on what you bring to it and what you do with it. Some people choose solitude because they're tired of the noise. They've seen through society's games and they want clarity. Some choose it because they need to heal, to process, to make sense of what life threw at them. Some choose it because they're building something, a vision, a project, a version of themselves that can't be built in the chaos of constant company. And some don't choose it at all. It chooses them. Life pushes them there and they have to decide what to do with it. None of these reasons are wrong. None of them are bad. What matters, the only thing that matters, is what you do once you're there. Because solitude is like fire. In the right hands, it forges steel. It creates light. It transforms raw material into something powerful. But in the wrong hands, it burns everything to the ground. The dangerous man who loves being alone understands this. He knows that sitting alone with your thoughts can either build you up or tear you down. That the silence can either bring clarity or drive you into madness. There's a reason why hermits throughout history have been both revered as wise and feared as insane. Because spending time alone amplifies whatever's already inside you. If you're sitting there feeding negative thoughts, replaying old wounds, convincing yourself the world is against you, solitude will turn that into an inferno that consumes you. But if you're using that time to think clearly, to read, to create, to question, to grow, solitude becomes the forge where you're remade into something the world has never seen. Nietzsche himself went insane toward the end of his life. Schopenhauer died bitter and alone, consumed by his own pessimism. They understood solitude's power, but even they weren't immune to its shadow side. They lost control. So here's the truth. It doesn't matter why you're alone. It doesn't matter if you chose it or it chose you. It doesn't matter if you're there to heal, to hide, to build, or to figure out who the hell you actually are. What matters is what you're becoming while you're there. Are you using this time to strengthen your mind? To strip away the lies you've been living? To build something real inside yourself? Or are you drowning in your own thoughts, letting the isolation rot you from the inside out. The dangerous man who loves being alone. He chose the first path. And that choice, that's what makes him dangerous. Once you start choosing solitude, once you start walking your own path, they'll come for you. Not with armies or laws, with something more subtle, more insidious. Guilt. You're being selfish. You've changed. You think you're better than everyone else? They'll make you doubt yourself. They'll make you feel like something's wrong with you for wanting to be alone, for not participating in their circus. And if guilt doesn't work, they'll try shame. They'll call you unsocial, weird, broken. And if shame doesn't work, they'll try fear. You'll die alone. You'll regret this when you're older. Nobody will be there for you when you need them. They paint solitude as this tragic, miserable existence. They write movies about lonely people who are sad and broken until they're saved by friendship or love. As if you are already not feeling unloved and lonely around them. The narrative has to be that you need them, that you can't be happy alone, that choosing solitude is giving up on life. But here's what they don't want you to know. Some of the happiest, most fulfilled people in history have been the ones who learned to be enough for themselves, the ones who didn't need a crowd to feel valuable, the ones who were dangerous enough to be alone. So what's the point of all this? Why am I telling you about philosophers, psychology, and history? Because I want you to understand something that might change your life. You don't have to play their game. You don't have to be constantly available, constantly connected, constantly performing for an audience that doesn't actually care about you. You're allowed to step back, to be alone, to think for yourself. And if that scares people, if that makes you dangerous in their eyes, good. Because the most dangerous thing you can be in a world that wants to control you is free. And freedom starts with the ability to be alone without being lonely, to walk away from the noise and find peace in the silence, to create your own values instead of adopting theirs. Schopenhauer said that a person who can't enjoy their own company is probably not very good company for others either. Nietzsche said that one must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. And history has shown us again and again that the people who change the world are often the ones who are comfortable walking alone. Not because they hate people, not because they're broken or afraid, but because they've found something rare, they've found themselves. And once you find yourself, once you really know who you are when nobody's watching, you become ungovernable, you become free, you become dangerous, and the world will never be the same because of it. You know what's wild? Right now, as you're reading this, something's shifting in you. Maybe you don't feel it yet. Maybe it's just a whisper, but you've started questioning. You've started looking at your life, at the people you surround yourself with, at the things you do because you're supposed to. And you're asking, is this actually for me? That's the dangerous part. That's when they lose control. Because once you start asking questions, you can't stop. It's like pulling a thread on a sweater. One question leads to another, and before you know it, the whole thing's unraveled. You started noticing how exhausting it is to be around certain people, how fake some conversations feel, how much of your life has been lived on autopilot, following a script someone else wrote. And now you're wondering, what happens if I stop following the script? What happens if I choose myself? What happens if I'm okay being alone? That's the moment everything changes. That's the moment you become dangerous. Here it is, the big secret, the thing they've been hiding from you your entire life. Being alone isn't the punishment. Being surrounded by people who drain you, who don't understand you, who need you to be small so they can feel big, that's the punishment. Being alone is the reward. It's the prize you get for having the courage to walk away from what doesn't serve you, for choosing peace over popularity, for choosing yourself over their approval. And once you realize that, once you truly understand that being alone can be the best thing that ever happened to you, you're free, you're dangerous, you're ungovernable. And no matter what they do, no matter what they say, no matter how hard they try to pull you back into the crowd, you'll never be theirs again. So if this resonated with you, if something in these words grabbed you by the throat and wouldn't let go, subscribe to the channel because we're going deeper into this stuff. We're tearing apart the lies society tells you. We're exploring the philosophy, the psychology, the history that they don't want you to know. And share this. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. That person sitting alone right now, feeling like something's wrong with them because they don't fit in. They need to know they're not broken. Comment below and tell me, what's the first step you're taking? What's the one thing you're going to do differently? Because this isn't just about watching videos. This isn't just about consuming content. This is about taking action. This is about becoming the dangerous man who loves being alone. Now go, walk your path, and remember, being alone isn't the problem. Being surrounded by the wrong people is. See you in the next one. Till then, keep being dangerous, my friends.